Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Coming up on today's show, on Wednesday, the UK's Chancellor of the Exchequer outlined the government's fiscal plans for the upcoming year, which include cuts to national insurance, an announcement of a new Great British Savings product, and an extension of the controversial windfall tax on energy firms. Author and economist Dr. Linda Yu and Christopher Breen, the head of Economic Insight at the Centre for Economics and Business Research, will shortly be joining me to discuss the economic fallout. And in case you missed it, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu led a somewhat small delegation of his ministers to Doha last weekend for an official state visit aimed at wooing Qatar's foreign direct investors. I was on the ground, and of course I'll be sharing those highlights with you. Then later I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business news stories of the week. But first, Jeremy Hunt delivered his spring budget earlier this week with one eye on a looming general election later this year. The hotly anticipated fiscal statement was full of measures aimed at boosting Britain's sluggish growth to reverse his party's electoral reforms. Aside cutting the rate of social security contributions by 2 percentage points for the second time in just over 3 months, the Chancellor also widened access to child benefit payments, froze fuel duties, extended relief on alcohol, and announced support for low-income households in a £13.9 billion package designed to ease cost of living concerns that are high on voters' minds. For a deeper dive, I'm now being joined by economist and author Dr. Linda Yu, who joins me from London. Dr. Linda Yu, thank you so much for taking your time out to join us on the show. So it appears as if the big giveaway from Wednesday's fiscal statement was a cut in the rate of national insurance. Do you think this is enough to stimulate much needed economic activity in Britain and, of course, consumer spending?
The independent fiscal body, the OBR, their assessment is that it does. It provides a near-term boost to consumers, and it adds about £900 to the average worker. And this is in combination with the 2p cut to national insurance that was announced in the autumn statement. So if you look at the OBR's upgrade of UK growth this year and next year, it is because of the supportive measures. And I think the importance of it is that the UK was technically in recession at the end of 2023. So such measures to help people and ensure that the recession doesn't continue is a welcome outcome from the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. It does appear to have had the thumbs up, as you said, from the Office for Budget Responsibility. Of course, there's much discussion about the cost of living. Yes, inflation is down to about 4%, but people are still struggling. Do you think the budget does enough to alleviate financial pressures on households? Because when you speak to people up and down the country, they are still feeling the pinch.
This is why I think the budget also had measures to support households on low incomes, because energy costs and the cost of living burden is still very high for a number of them. Do the measures completely offset the cost of living crisis? No. The impact on people's disposable incomes is around 4%, which is higher than it is in a normal recession. However, the government has limited fiscal headroom because the Office for Budget Responsibility tells them essentially how much spending they can do and still meet their fiscal role of stabilizing debt as a share of GDP over the next 5 years. And the balance in terms of supporting short-term measures like putting money into people's pockets has to be balanced against what people also want. In survey after survey, people want to see more investment in public services. And so monies which are allocated to today means that there's less money available to allocate towards public services within this fiscal headroom. And what we don't see in the OBR makes this quite clear is that the longer term potential output of the economy hasn't been changed by the budget. So in other words, the UK economy is forecast to grow at about 1.75% in the next few years on average. And that means growth won't quite be fast enough to provide tax revenues to offer those important services. So this budget has done something for the near term, but it hasn't changed the overall growth picture of the UK, which does need a boost, especially because higher growth means higher tax revenues, means more money on services like the health service and social care.
Dr. Linda Yu, economist and author, always a pleasure listening to your insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The Centre for Economics and Business Research supplies economic forecasting and analysis to British business. Christopher Breen is the CEBR's Head of Economic Insight, and he joined me earlier in the studio for his view on the spring budget. Christopher Breen, it's a pleasure having you in the Channel's Business Global studio today. So what does this budget mean for the average Brit? Are we better or less off?
So if we take just the announcements of the budget itself, then people will be better off.
Okay.
There's around a £10 billion tax cut in the form of national insurance contributions, the rate of which was cut by 2p.
Yeah. Second cut,
yeah, in as many fiscal events. But if we look at sort of tax changes as a whole over the last couple of years, then people are no better off. It was announced in 2021 that the rate at the value at which you start paying tax would remain frozen for the next 6 years. And that means as people's wages are increasing, just to keep up with inflation, they're being pushed into higher levels of tax. Yes. So the impacts of this have been roughly offset by the national insurance contributions cut so far, but actually with inflation continuing to rise over the next few years, that impact will actually become greater and greater. So far, the impacts are roughly even, but those on lower incomes slightly better off, and those on higher incomes slightly worse off.
Lots of speculation, of course, about when we're heading to the general election, which is why I think Wednesday's statement was so important. However, I do believe, according to Jeremy Hunt, there could be another fiscal statement. But everybody, of course, is talking about the cost of living and the fact that we are in a shallow recession. Were the announcements enough to stimulate economic growth and to boost consumer spending? Because, of course, that's what's needed.
Absolutely. So, again, because of the kind of offsetting impacts on taxes, it will have a slight impact come April when these tax changes actually come into effect. But there are, as you mentioned, greater things going on with the consumer. So up until mid last year, wages were not keeping up with inflation, particularly given the cost of food, cost of energy. Those were impacting particularly those on lower incomes hardest. That is actually now in reverse. So inflation is now falling faster than wages. And we expect that effect to actually increase further over the next few months. And this will be probably the greater effect that we see on consumption, with the sort of tax changes playing a more small role in this.
Absolutely. We know data can be slightly distorted, so it's always really difficult to kind of forecast where the economy is heading. But according to the CEBR, Centre for Economics and Business Research, you head the Economic Insight Desk there. You believe the worst is behind us. What indicators are you looking at that suggest that there could be more growth this year for the UK economy?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, the main thing looking at is real wage growth. So wages minus inflation, and the fact that that's increasing means that people are should be better off as a whole. And given that consumption, 60% of all expenditure roughly in the economy is households. Yeah. So how households fare largely would be an indicator of the wider economy. If we look at things like credit card spending data, that seems to have been improving over the last couple of months.
Maybe because they haven't got any cash.
Well, yes, great.
Everyone's on the credit card.
Yeah, retail sales data has improved. It is largely because of
wet weather.
Well, and discounted shopping as well, yes, because it was quite a bad Christmas for retailers. So a lot of heavy discounting, which has led to people spending more. But nonetheless, still a good indication that things are improving slightly. And then we have our own consumer confidence index that we run with YouGov, and that shows that confidence in households has been improving. So there are a few tentative signs there that consumers are feeling a little bit better and spending a little bit more. But we think really the impacts will improve from April when the Ofgem price cap, which is the
energy
price cap, that falls quite markedly, as well as that's the point where national insurance contribution
kick in.
And then from June onwards, we expect to see the Bank of England start to decrease interest rates.
June. I might have to hold you to that, Christopher. Just very briefly, because we're running out of time. Was there anything missing or anything that you were expecting that Jeremy Hunt didn't say?
So we know that the Chancellor has very limited room for manoeuvre, and this has been an increasingly big problem for the Chancellor and previous Chancellors.
Fiscal responsibility is why he was put in the job.
Absolutely.
In the first
so
place.
I think we went in there with relatively low expectations. I think he announced some good stuff to support parents in particular, and to support business investment and public sector productivity. These are three areas where he made some small improvements, but would be three key areas to improve on in the next fiscal event and indeed in the manifestos.
Yes, we thought that he wasn't going to be giving another one, but I don't think this Conservative government are letting go just yet. Christopher Breen, Head of Economic Insight at the Centre for Economic and Business Research, or the CEBR. Thank you so much for your expertise today.
Thank you very much.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his party trail Labour by around 20 percentage points ahead of a general election that must take place before the end of January, but is widely expected in the second half of this year. Our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey tells us more. Simon, so let's put the economics to one side, because the people that I've spoken to agree to believe what the OBR has said, which is households will be better off due to Wednesday's statement. But politically, so much speculation, we thought this was the last fiscal statement of the year before a general election, but perhaps we won't be going to the ballot box in May.
Yeah, I think quite a few analysts looking at this will say that this doesn't look like the budget before a general election.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a sort of going into war, all guns blazing, this is why you should vote for Conservatives. The Conservatives obviously being the government, the party of fiscal responsibility. They're the ones that want to keep taxes low and put more money in people's pockets. This didn't really come across as that. And I think, like so often for Rishi Sunak's government, this is a kind of budget that's going to please nobody, really. They're trying to please everyone. They're trying to be responsible. That is Jeremy Hunt's MO. He wants to come across as the responsible one. But in doing so, because the Conservative Party is so spread and has such a wide, diverse range, I think people on the far right, or people on the right of the party in general, are going to dislike this because they say it doesn't go far enough, there aren't big enough tax cuts, we're not going to get elected when we're so many points behind Labour. And then, obviously, the Labour Party, the rest of the people on the left will be saying, well, you're not going far enough in the opposite direction.
Yeah, giving him one hand, taking with the other.
Yeah, they're scrapping non-dom status. We kind of expected that. And then you obviously got the national insurance thing. But yeah, this doesn't look like a budget that sort of, Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt are going out there to tell the electorate this is why you need to vote for the Conservatives. So that's sort of interesting. And then we're going to see a fallout, I think, from the Conservatives who want more and who want to push through more things. So maybe they're trying to play it light-footed before maybe another announcement before a November-December election. Obviously, there's not going to be a budget before then, but there may be more announcements to come.
Yeah, fiscal statement.
Exactly. It looks more like that this is a kind of, they're trying to say to the electorate, look, we are a responsible party. Remember what Labour did. I know that's the line they play all the time. The Labour Party, sank the economy however many years ago. We are the party of responsibility, and then maybe just before an election in November, December, they're going to come out with some dazzling new fireworky sort of type things. But yeah, this doesn't seem like anything that's really going to please anyone too much. So we're kind of here sitting and we're not really talking about anything because there's not much to talk about, really. This is kind of what you might expect the Conservatives to do. So yeah, I think it's a tough one for Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak because it's really hard to sort of sell this as being anything too glamorous or extraordinary. I think they're just going to portray themselves as careful, cautious custodians of the economy. Keep what they're trying to say is that look, the economy is on the right track. Don't go back to square one with Labour. That's their sort of policy, their motto at the moment.
We're off budget watch. We're now on ballot watch. Thanks, Simon. In a moment, I'll be sharing highlights from the Nigerian government's visit to Qatar. But until then, here's a breakdown of some of the biggest business news stories of the week. Jeff Bezos has dethroned Elon Musk to reclaim his title as the world's richest man. The Amazon founder's net worth currently stands at $200 billion, topping the Tesla's chief $198 billion, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. Amazon's share price has surged by more than 18% this year, while Tesla's has dropped by by 24%. Musk, who also runs X and SpaceX, rose to the top of the rich list in May after toppling Bernard Arnault, the chairman and CEO of the luxury goods firm LVMH, who now ranks third with $197 billion. Apple's iPhone sales in China plunged 24% in the first 6 weeks of this year, according to fresh data. During the same period, sales of the local smartphone Huawei surged 64%. Apple is facing a tough environment in its key market, China, due to intense competition from local smartphone makers. Huawei struggled for years due to US sanctions and allegations of spying, but its sales have risen since the release of its Mate 60 series of 5G smartphones, which was released last summer. The Nationwide Building Society has agreed terms for a takeover of Virgin Money in a £2.9 billion deal that will rival other UK lenders. Nationwide is the country's biggest building society with more than 17 million customers, while Virgin Money is the UK's sixth largest retail bank with an estimated 6.6 million customers and 91 branches. Nationwide says it does not intend to make any material changes to the size of Virgin Money's 7,300 strong workforce in the near term. Now to my final story. During a state visit to Qatar last weekend, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu presided over the Nigeria-Qatar Business and Investment Forum, where he assured the international business community that Nigeria is ready for serious business. In a closed-door meeting, 7 landmark agreements between both nations were signed, covering education, industry, mines, agriculture, a cooperation agreement in the fields of youth and sports, and the establishment of a joint business council. The Qataris are interested in us, we're interested in them. How would you sum up this state visit?
This state visit for me is very strategic and also very important because Nigerian government under the able leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu have been doing extremely well in trying to reach out to major countries that we have important partnership with them in the past, but it hasn't worked. Of course, but this time around I have no doubt in my mind because of the openness and sincerity of our president. He made it clear to everyone here that the Nigerian government is open to inviting everyone, and some of the obstacles of the past, he made it clear to everyone here will be addressed. Many foreign investors have been very cautious about investing in Nigeria because of the level of corruption in the past, and now, of course, the problem of ease of doing business. But under his leadership today, we have seen it. The Qatar government are very keen in partnering with Nigerian government as well as also encouraging their business people to come to Nigeria and invest in many areas, particularly the area of solid mineral resources, the area of oil and gas, as well as agriculture. Healthcare is also one of the areas that we believe we can certainly work with the Qatari business community, as well as government. And of course, some of us that are representatives of nationals, we have other areas we're looking at.
It is very obvious that the Qataris will work with us. We're already engaging to make sure that we can bring those capital that is required into our country and into our industry, and ultimately supplying energy to the markets. Of course, most especially into our domestic market, and creating chemicals, creating power, and of course creating the liquids that the market still requires. And we know that the Qataris are very good in deploying capital to the right places. We are the right place today. Excellent fiscal environment, excellent and focused tax system, and of course ultimately, the market will see this, and of course we're convinced that this by Mr. President is the right time, right timing, and of course now we take the next steps.
Honourable Minister, how would you summarise this trip? Was it a successful business roundtable?
Thank you. I would say very successful. I would say it's another round of economic diplomacy by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and it has been relatively successful. We had a very, very good session with the ruler of the state of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. We had a very, very close interaction with him and his whole team. And at the end of it, the message was that, look, Qatar investment authority in particular, but Qatar in general is interested in investments, is interested in exploring investments in the areas of agriculture, small-scale industries, of course, oil and gas, and even tourism and hospitality. And those are areas where Nigeria has some comparative advantage, has opportunity. And of course, Mr. President emphasized the extent to which the economy is being prepared for investment, it's being stabilized. The inflation, especially as soon as more food production comes into play, we expect inflation to go down. We expect the exchange rate to continue stabilizing. Central Bank has already got it, reversing the accelerating trend. And now it's just for it to stabilize further. And of course, with that, interest rates will come down and investors will have a chance to use the financial markets to grow their businesses.
Why was it important for you to come and support His Excellency the President?
Thank you very much. You have heard what the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has said. He said that he has given all the assurances needed for investors to come and invest in Nigeria. Their money will be saved, guarantee security and others. But most importantly, I came here to support Mr. President because the President wants to see how the economy of the nation will be revived. This will never be feasible without direct foreign investment. And therefore, I believe Nigeria and Qatar shares some commonalities, especially in the areas of climate, especially down the north, and in the areas of our culture. So I believe we need at this material time where we need the economy of the country to enhance. This will never be visible without having collaborations with foreign nationalities. So this is something that we need to support the national government. As subnationals, we shall also key in to the requirements of the Republic of the federal government. As I said during the session, Borno State has huge potentials in the areas of agriculture and the areas of livestock development. Hitherto, Borno State has the largest number of livestock in Nigeria. You can understand what I mean by highest number of livestock. Before the insurgency, now that the security situation has improved in Borno State, we shall partner with Nigeria to see how Qatari will invest in livestock development in Nigeria, in Borno State, so that they will also export. We can also export beef to Qatar and also invest in agriculture.
What this has shown that the private sector in both countries indeed can come together and also bring our people together through investment. So what we've done, we've signed two great MOUs, apart from the government agreement. That is the Qatar Nigerian Business Council, and also we're also going to have an MOU, which is a framework on which we do businesses, and also we verify information for prospective investors. So even if Nigerians are present directly, they're going to ask us to verify if there are potential and ideal businesses. So we've set up the framework, and I encourage all Nigerians to take advantage of what has been opened through the work of Mr. President so that we can immediately take full advantage of all the opportunities available in Qatar.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.